Hello friends, I'm Laura Barat from laurabaratastrologer.com, and today I'm discussing Jupiter in women's charts, and this is kind of paired with my former recent video about Venus in men's charts. So I go through all the signs, Jupiter and all the signs, describing kind of how that Jupiter produces the man. Jupiter is the karaka for the husband or boyfriend in a woman's life. And he acts differently in different signs, and you'll see what I mean in a minute when I get into it. But before I get into that, I'd like to let you all know that I have developed more courses and more PDF manuals on my site. And I also am a tropical Vedic astrologer and Cards of Truth reader. If you're interested in any of those services, please visit my website at laurabaratastrologer.com. Okay, so Jupiter. Jupiter, according to Parasara and Jaimini, represents the husband or boyfriend in a woman's chart. There are some differences of opinion about it. Some Vedic astrologers do use Mars for a man in a woman's life, and a lot of Western astrologers use that. But I do not use that. I use Jupiter because that's what Parasara specifically designates, and so does Jaimini. And I usually use them as my base, my foundation for most of my techniques that I do. Okay, so Jupiter in Aries. Aries is the sign where the sun is exalted and Saturn is debilitated. The thing is with Jupiter stays in a sign for more or less a year, more depending on whether it goes retrograde in that sign or, you know, what have you. And it really is a very significant time for the world, just because Jupiter is a slow-moving planet and he's such a benefic, gives joy, gives higher knowledge, wisdom, our spiritual path, money, children, creativity, all of those good things. So as he moves through the zodiac, he definitely puts a stamp on that year of time. And it's very significant in men's charts, but women's charts more so, because that's going to represent the husband that she lives with, or her experience of men in her life. Okay, whereas in men's charts, Venus moves much more quickly. Venus moves, about less than a month in a sign, unless he goes retrograde. And I know that, of course, there's other factors. There's the Dara Karaka, there's the seventh lord, the seventh house cusp, the seventh lord in the Navamsha, all those kinds of things. But that go into getting an idea of who you're going to partner with. But generally speaking, you can see quite a bit for the spouse, from Venus in a man's chart or Jupiter in a woman's. Okay? So Jupiter in Aries is where the sun is exalted. So a woman having Jupiter in Aries in her chart will attract men to her, will have men in her life who either have a really good relationship with their father, or they benefit quite a bit from the government or power and authority. And they do well with their bosses or people that are in charge of them or over them. Or they become their own boss and become very adept and highly significant in their chosen line of work. They become an authority, in other words, which is what the sun rules, and the power in the world. So this is how a woman, what kind of man a woman will get in her life when she has Jupiter in Aries. Now, the man will also have problems with Saturnian things like Saturn is the eldest sibling, he's the eldest sibling, so the person can have problems with that, or the man can have problems with that. Saturn is people who are subordinate to us or who work beneath us, meaning we manage them, like our assistants, or anybody that we are a boss over. we're not going to have that great of a relationship with those people, the man in her life, in other words. And, Saturn is wild animals. So the man can have some problems with wild animals. Saturn is all those jobs like that have to do with sewage. It's manual labor jobs like plumbing and landscaping, roof work, drywall, whatever. They might have problems with those kinds of people. Okay. And so some examples of Jupiter in Aries for a woman is Angelina Jolie. So Brad Pitt, I don't know much about his relationship with his parents, but he became an authority figure of his profession. I mean, he's one of the biggest movie stars probably ever. So, that's, and he became an authority on, handsome, good-looking, handsome men. I mean, he's considered to be one of the most handsome men, ever. So yeah, you can see how that he had really a strong influence. Okay. I don't know about his, relationship with, maybe, people working for him, people that work in the house like maids or nannies or any of that kind of thing. I really don't know. But, and they keep that under wraps. But that's an example, okay, of Jupiter in Aries. And then also Ethel Kennedy. Ethel Kennedy was married to, Robert Kennedy, who was assassinated. And, he's a politician. So he's a person in authority. And Rosalind Carter as well. Rosalind Carter had Jupiter in Aries. And Jimmy Carter was president. Okay, moving on to Jupiter in Taurus. Taurus is where the sun is exalted. Sorry. Taurus is where the moon is exalted, and nothing is debilitated in Taurus. But the moon is exalted there, and it has its mula tricona there. So the moon does very well. So this is, the moon is the public. Okay. The moon is women in general, not just women who your romantic partner, but, just women in your life for both men and women. The moon is your mother, and it's your mother in that comforting, that role, that emotional, supportive role. And so when a woman has Jupiter in Taurus, she can get the types of men who are good with public. They're diplomatic, they work well with the public, or they are very close with their mother. They get along with their mother well, or they get on with women in general very well. They're charismatic with women. Okay. And so two people who have this is, Monica Bellucci. She's an Italian actress, and her husband was Vincent Cassel. And, they're divorced now, but, he was an actor, and he was also in the circus before he became an actor. And it was at his mother's prompting that he joined the circus, and she was very, intellectual, and, I think she was a journalist. I can't remember exactly, but I remember reading where she encouraged him to go into the circus and become a dancer, because he was really, could move really well. And so that's one. He's a French actor, if you don't know who he is. He's been in a lot of American movies too. And then Catherine Bach. Catherine Bach is married to Ringo Starr, who is the drummer for the Beatles. And the moon also rules music, believe it or not, because it rules rhythm. So it can make the man interested in music or good at music or just has a fine ear for it. And then, of course, he was in the public eye quite a bit. So those are two examples of Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter in Gemini, nothing is exalted and nothing is debilitated in Gemini or Sagittarius. But Venus does well in Gemini because Mercury is a friend to Venus, and so does, and of course, Mercury does very well in Gemini because it's its own sign, and Saturn does well in Gemini. So all those three planets, the man will have good relationships with. Mercury is a very intellectual planet, a very articulate planet, good with languages. Mercury is the planet of friends. So the man can have very beneficial friendships. And then what doesn't do well there? Mars. Mars does not do well in signs of Mercury and Jupiter. So Mars is siblings and real estate or buildings. And Mars is, our willpower, our ability to exercise, exerting ourselves martially. So those are the types of things that Jupiter and Gemini could have some problems with. But it's not nearly as significant as if a planet was debilitated or exalted there in Gemini, okay? And so I'm just going to skip the examples for Jupiter and Gemini because it's not as strong. You won't see it, you won't notice it as much. The things that he does well with and the things he doesn't do well with, okay? So Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer and Mars is debilitated in Cancer. So the woman with Jupiter in Cancer can get a man who has problems with buildings, whatever it is, falling apart, waterlogged, mold, stuff like that. If he becomes a landlord, he's going to have some problems with the buildings and the, working with land and real estate. Also, Mars is siblings, so he can have problems with siblings, except for the eldest, which is Saturn. Or he can, he will have problems, exercising for some reason, maybe because the sign of Cancer rules the lung area, so he might have asthma, or just, not really good at exertion, or, having problems. There can be all kinds of problems. Now, it doesn't mean the people or the men don't do this. It doesn't mean that he doesn't stay in shape. It just means there's more problems involved with it. Okay? And then Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so the woman will get a man who has a very good relationship with higher knowledge and learning, going to university, has usually beneficial relationship with spiritual mentors or spiritual paths, religion, wisdom, philosophy, children, wealth. He manages his wealth very well. So that's a good thing for having a Jupiter exalted in Cancer in a woman's chart. Okay, so Leo. Leo, nothing is exalted or debilitated in Leo or Aquarius. But the sun does very well in Leo because that's the mula tricona of Leo, or the mula tricona of the sun is Leo. So the sun does very well. Saturn is an enemy to the sun. So Saturn does not do well in Leo. So having Jupiter in Leo is very similar to having Jupiter in Aries, but not as pronounced. So go back and listen to what I talked about Jupiter in Aries at the beginning, and you'll get an idea of what having Jupiter in Leo is like. It's very similar. The guy's going to have a good relationship with father or government, or, attain a position of authority and have problems with Saturnian things, which I explained pretty well in that Jupiter in Aries, okay? Jupiter in Virgo. I wanted to give an example of Jupiter in Cancer, okay? So women who have an exalted Jupiter in Cancer. So you've got Kate Hudson, okay? Kate Hudson was married to the lead singer of the Black Crowes, I think. So he was a musician. And Cancer is a sign of the moon, which rules music. But also, a sign of dealing with the public, being in the public eye, right? I don't know how philosophical or intelligent he is, but he probably is, since she had Jupiter in Cancer. And, how well he relates with children, but he seems like a very creative person. So that's another sign of Jupiter as well. Mars is debilitated there, like I said. Oh, and then you have Frida Kahlo, the artist Frida Kahlo, had an exalted Jupiter in Cancer. And she was married to another artist, and Diego Garcia, I think his name was. And he was also really well known and you know, in his own right. And he was the one that encouraged her to become a better artist. But I know, you know, he was a pretty intelligent guy. He was kind of political and got her into it. So that's an example of that. Okay. And they could have had problems with their younger siblings, you know, these two guys I've mentioned, and you know, some other type of martial things like exercise or real estate, buildings, things like that. Okay. So we did Jupiter in Leo, Jupiter in Virgo. All right. So Virgo is where Mercury is exalted and Venus is debilitated. So a woman with Jupiter in Virgo is going to have a man that might have had some upsetting or traumatizing relationships in his life before her. Or he experiences his relationships. It's more difficult for him to experience relationships in that benefit him. Or he has an outlook on it that isn't as open as others would be. And just because Venus is debilitated in Virgo, and Venus is also kind of the pleasure we get from the world. It's what the pleasure we get from worldly things. And the most pleasure people usually get, not always, but usually, is through having relationships. So, so the person could have had some negative experiences with those things. And Jupiter doesn't, do well in signs of Mercury anyway, but, so, and then the man in her life can be maybe a little more reserved when it comes to deriving enjoyment from worldly things, which is also like food and drink. That's another thing Venus rules. Venus rules vehicles, so she could have a man in her life who has problems with his vehicles. Venus rules swimming pools and ponds of water, things like that. And just anything that's kind of considered to be luxuries, that's ruled by Venus. Pampering yourself, like getting a massage and facials, you know, things of that nature, those are all ruled by Venus. Mercury is exalted, so the man can be very articulate, very intellectual, very, you know, good in the arts even, good at performing arts, works well with his hands, has very beneficial friends, is good in business, because Mercury is a planet of business and law, so he can have some very good experiences with those things. Now, some examples are Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath had Jupiter in Virgo. So her husband was Ted Hughes. And as you know, she committed suicide because of his infidelity. That was but she had some mental problems. But those were the things that pushed her over the edge. I mean, it's even in her chart. She has some mental issues and some depression and bipolar stuff going on. But and then after her, he left her for a woman. And that woman, his mistress, her name was Assia Wevel, she committed suicide because he was kind of getting rid of her, you know. And they had a child together. And so you can see his experience with women in his life was not the greatest, okay? Or it had a tragic quality to it. And of course, these are extreme examples, okay? And there are a lot of other things can mitigate these things, but these are extreme examples of this. And And then Julia Roberts, she has Jupiter in Virgo, and she was married to a musician. His first name was Kyle, and his last name escapes me now. But he was a lot older than her, and she ended up leaving him. And it was kind of a whim, you know. They got together and they got married really quickly. And but he was very bitter when she left him. So his experiences of her weren't, you know, were painful. Okay? That's just all that means. Okay, so Jupiter in Libra. Sun is debilitated and Saturn is exalted in Libra. When Jupiter is in Libra, the women usually get men in their life who are, don't have the greatest relationship with their fathers. Okay. However, if that isn't the case, then they don't do well with authority. They don't do well with their bosses. They fail to attain a really strong position of authority within their own profession, or they have a lot of competition in that area, and they're never really able to quite make it to the very top, or something of that nature. Okay. And then Saturn is exalted there. Saturn is, you know, people who work under them, so they can manage down. You know, you have people who manage up, and then you have people who manage down. These people are really good with managing people under them, because that's what's ruled by Saturn. Okay. And also Saturn is the eldest sibling, so they can have a really good relationship with the eldest sibling. Saturn is, you know, those manual labor and people who work on your house and do, you know, your assistants, your maids and your nannies, all that kind of stuff. So, you would probably have really good experiences with those types of people. They'll do a really good job for you. Okay. So that's Jupiter in Virgo. In Libra. So some examples of this are Madonna. And, Madonna she's married to Sean Penn. She was married to, oh no, she wasn't married to that guy, but she was married to, Guy Ritchie, who's a director. So I really don't know, you know, very much about his family relationships and stuff. So, or Sean Penn's, to be honest with you. But there is somebody else. There's, my mother has it. And so my father did not have a very good relationship with his father at all. And he managed down in his own business. So that really makes sense quite a bit. I have Jupiter in Libra. I've been married once before and I'm married now. They both have not good relationships with their father at all. So, so this is kind of, you know, I really saw this, just in my life. This is how I got on this. And I started to notice these things. And there were a couple other of astrologers who talked about it quite a bit. So that's how that works. Now, Jupiter in Scorpio. Scorpio, nothing is exalted in Scorpio, but the moon is debilitated in the first 3 degrees of Scorpio. So when Jupiter's in Scorpio, the woman gets a man who doesn't have that great of a relationship with his mother, or she was not in his life, or, you know, there was a very, there was some pain going on, or when he was in childhood, he was not cared for as much as he needed to be. Might not have that great of a relationship with women, you know, doesn't get on with them very well, and or the public. Okay, And these can be all of these things, or it can be just one of these things. You know, like I said, in the entire chart, you have to look at all of it. Okay. An example of that is Ava Gardner. And she was married to Frank Sinatra. I don't know what his relationship with his mother was like, really, to be honest with you. He did have a good relationship with the public, so that can kind of mitigate some of that. But that was really the only example that stood out. And there's some other things in Ava Gardner's chart that, you know, point to her spouse being someone of authority, someone who has you know, moves far in life, and that doesn't really have to do with the public, because in her 7th house, her ascendant is the last degree of Cancer. In my software anyway. In some others it's in Leo, but in mine it's in the last degree of Cancer. So she had the Sun and I think Mercury in the 7th house. So she's going to get someone in her life who probably is involved with the public, or she did. And so that kind of mitigated, you know, having that Jupiter in Scorpio. Although I really like I said, I have no idea what Frank Sinatra's relationship with his mother was like. So, so moving on, Jupiter in Sagittarius. Okay, so nothing is debilitated or exalted in Sagittarius. However, Jupiter does very well in Sagittarius. So, it's his Mula Tricona sign, and its own to like the first 20 degrees, and then it's his own sign. And so the woman will get somebody who's very knowledgeable, very good with children, very creative, you know, probably knows how to manage his wealth very well, has a, you know, likes to learn, good with universities, higher knowledge, all that kinds of stuff. So everything that Jupiter rules, spirituality, you know, religion, higher philosophical, ethical laws. Okay. Jupiter in Capricorn. This is where Jupiter is debilitated. And Jupiter is debilitated there, but Mars is exalted. So the woman can get a man that, well, her experience of men she can have some painful experiences with the men in her life. Jupiter in Capricorn. That is not, like I said, you have to look at the whole chart to, you know, see what's going on, but usually this does cause some problems in relationships for women, or the guy. If the relationship is really good, there's something off about the guy. You know, maybe he has addictions, or, you know, a past that he doesn't reveal, or something like that. Okay. And then, his relationship with religion and philosophy isn't so wonderful, or he had some painful experiences with those types of things. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. But the guy has really strong willpower. He's probably a very good, can do athletics easily. And he'll have a good relationship with real estate, or real estate will benefit him in some way. And his siblings could be, you know, either very successful, or he benefits from them in some way. Okay. Jupiter in Aquarius. Nothing is debilitated or exalted in Aquarius. However, Saturn does very well in Aquarius, because that is the Mula Tricona. The Sun doesn't do very well in Aquarius. So Saturnian things are beneficial to the man in her life. He can probably manage down very well, treats his employees or people beneath him, his subordinates, treats them very well. They treat him, they like him, they do a good job for him. All those kinds of things. He probably does well with the eldest sibling, if he has one. And also, Saturn is a planet of being alone and being able to focus. So he can probably do that very well. And then the sun doesn't do very well. It's very similar to Libra, having Jupiter in Libra, where there might not be the greatest relationship with the father, or the person doesn't get along with his bosses, or, you know, people in authority, or, you know, the government in any type of fashion. Or the person really has to struggle to get ahead, you know, and be the number one, or make his own kingdom in his profession or what he does. Oh, and I wanted to give some examples of Jupiter in Capricorn. Sorry about that. That's Barbara Bush is Jupiter in Capricorn. So George W. Bush, and Haley Baldwin. Haley Baldwin just married Justin Bieber, and she has Jupiter in Capricorn. So if they have children, you know, I don't know how there might be some problematic relationship with the kids on Justin's part for Jupiter in Capricorn. Okay, so I'm not going to give an example for Jupiter in Aquarius because, you know, nothing's really exalted or debilitated there, but you can kind of look at Jupiter in Libra. It's very similar. Jupiter in Pisces. So Venus is exalted in Pisces, and Mercury is debilitated. And so the woman will get a man who has great experiences in love affairs, who has good experiences in his love life, or had them, or his girlfriends or wives benefit him quite a bit in some way. Okay. He does well. He enjoys life. He enjoys all the sensual Venetian things of life. Food and drink and being pampered and the luxuries, okay? Mercury is debilitated there, so not that articulate, not too intellectual. I mean, they can be smart. Mercury is intellectuality, and Jupiter is creative genius. And Jupiter does very well in Pisces, but Mercury doesn't. So the person can be... doesn't mean they're not intelligent. It just means they're not very articulate, or they can't express it out in the world, you know, as much as they would like to. Like somebody like Stephen Hawking, who couldn't even talk, you know, or barely. You know, so that's how that works. Okay. Mercury is friends. So the man might not have the best friends in the world, or sometimes friends stab him in the back, or, you know, that, he's been betrayed by a friend at one time in his life. So that is Jupiter in Pisces, and some examples of that are Demi Moore, and so she was married to Ashton Kutcher and Bruce Willis. And, you know, I think she benefited Ashton quite a bit because she was considerably older than him and knew Hollywood, was a famous movie star. And, you know, he really got some really good movie roles after he married her. So that's kind of his experience of her helping him, right? And then, believe it or not, I was talking Ossia Webble. Ossia Webble was Ted Hughes's mistress. The one that he left Sylvia Plath for, she had Jupiter in Pisces. So his experience of Sylvia Plath was, Sylvia Plath, that whole thing that happened with her suicide and everything, and then she really skyrocketed posthumously, to fame. And, that helped him. There was all this attention on him. Probably at the time he hated it, but that really propelled him into the limelight because it was such a drama. Okay. And, you know, people of course eat that up, right? So he became a lot more famous due to her. I think that if that had not happened, he just would have been, just another poet. I mean, he's very good. I like his stuff a lot, but this whole, I mean, he's known now, you know, after his death very much. So, and then Ingrid Bergman, she was married, gosh, I forgot his first name, but he was a big famous director, and she was a great movie star, really good looking. And so I think that she was beneficial to him quite a bit as well. So, so yeah, those are some examples of Jupiter in Pisces. And so yeah, that's all for today. And yeah, I think that's all I want to tell you guys today. But I will be making more videos because we're going into fall now. So okay, so thanks for watching. Till next time, bye.